And the Oscar goes to...
And the Oscar goes to...
And the Oscar goes to...
Hi everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of the Awards Watch Oscar podcast. And it's a very special edition because some announcements came down the pike this morning from the Academy, and we really need to talk about them today. I have a returning guest who was recently on the Oscar podcast, Daniel Joyaux. Hello, Daniel.
Hello, Eric. How are you?
I am manic and crazy and confused and just distressed.
Same here.
Yes. So, if you were anywhere near the internet today, you know that the Board of Governors of the Academy, who put on the Academy Awards, had a meeting last night, and they re-elected John Bailey as their president. No surprise there. But then dropped 3 huge bombs that we're going to talk about. One of them is changing the telecast to be a tighter 3-hour telecast, which is going to include moving some categories around. There is a big change in the 92nd Oscars, the 2020 Oscars, and that date and how that's going to affect everybody else. But the big change is a new category award. We're going to save that to the end because it needs a special place. And we're going to start with the announcement of a 3-hour Oscars telecast. And I'll just read very shortly exactly what the press release said. It says, "We are committed to producing an entertaining show in 3 hours, delivering a more accessible Oscars for our viewers worldwide. To honor all 24 award categories, we will present select categories live in the Dolby Theater during commercial breaks, categories to be determined. The winning moments will then be edited and aired later in the broadcast." Okay, so I think it's pretty clear by categories to be determined what categories are most likely going to end up in the shitter there.
Yeah, there are really only a few options.
There really are. And, you know, there's a little bit of irony to the fact that a lot of times these categories, and what we're talking about, are the shorts and sound categories, stuff like that, those kind of technical categories that people often say, well, these are my bathroom categories, I'm going to the bathroom. I'm saddened by this idea that they're going to take these crafts to such a tiny and small place. These are people that work very hard. There are people that have created entire careers from making shorts and doing smaller technical side of film. I think it's just mean-spirited, and I know other awards bodies do this because they have a ton of categories. The Tonys do this. The Grammys do this. The Emmys have a whole weekend of separate categories in which they give out awards because they have so many. There's not that many at the Oscars.
Yeah, I mean, so I think we agree that the shorts will be the first ones to get the axe.
Yeah.
Correct?
Oh, yeah.
So 3 shorts categories. There's Best Live Action Short, Best Animated Short, and Best Documentary Short. And what I think is really sad about the possibility of these categories going away is when I was growing up, certainly I did not care about these categories. I don't think anyone mostly did outside of, the families of the nominees. But around 10 or so years ago, these films started to come out as packages in art house theaters, and they're actually somewhat widely seen now.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think makes it really disappointing that, just probably less than 10 years after we've gotten used to seeing these films and having some sort of emotional investment in the winner, that now all of a sudden these awards are almost definitely gonna, not be seen.
Yeah, it's it breaks my heart because we've had some pretty fantastic moments with these.
Oh, and these winners tend to be some of the most excited ones of the telecast because, they're not heavily prognosticated. No one has any sense of who will win. They're genuinely surprised when they do. They don't feel that they belong at the Oscars. They're shocked to be there. They're who exhibit the most emotion.
Absolutely. I mean, this is. I mean, there's a lot of reasons this is happening, and we will get into that a little bit later because ABC and Disney are just pure evil. But yeah, these are people that might never have this chance again. This is an incredible platform for them, and yeah, they are excited. Their speeches are passionate. I think that one of the things it does the most is give the average viewer and the person that is, maybe interested in film, and they can see somebody that more closely resembles them and their possibilities than Meryl Streep.
Yeah, I agree.
And that is robbing a generation of people that watch the Oscars and see things like I would like that. Maybe I can do that. These are people that absolutely provide that. But on the other side, we also have really fantastic, crazy moments, like when Music for Prudence won, and in the middle of the guy's acceptance speech.
I was literally just looking that up on IMDb because I couldn't remember his name.
Roger Ross Williams.
Yep.
And then the former producer on Music for Prudence, Eleanor Burketta, came running down and Kanye'd him. Oh my God. It was crazy. It was funny, but it was just so wild. And it was a moment that is... That kind of thing only is going to happen in those categories.
And something that's funny, well, I don't know about funny, but at least worth noting, is that he is now one of the Academy governors, I think. I believe he is a governor of the documentary branch.
See, there you go. That is why these categories are great. You'll also see a little more visibility in these categories than you will in others in terms of diversity of stories and diversity of filmmakers.
Yep.
I think it's nuts. I think it's crazy. And something that is a part of this that I want to, outside of the short shrifting, the shorts categories, is the thing that they say about delivering a more accessible Oscars for our viewers worldwide. So that is a load of horse shit because even though the show is very well viewed, the Oscars and the Academy are still extremely slow on the uptake of providing multiple platforms to watch the show.
It's annoyed me that I can't buy old Oscar ceremonies on DVD and just spend a week here plowing through every Oscar ceremony from the 70s.
That would be pretty awesome. I like that. But I mean, this is a big part of this is ratings. The ratings were down again last year. Even though it was like 26.5 million people, it's still the second highest broadcast. So Calm down, ABC, Disney, calm down. But they are the ones that pushed to make this happen. They really forced the hand of the Academy to make this attempt to shorten the broadcast.
So I think we should hold off on talking about Disney until we get to the popular film category because those are very related things.
They are. they're related in two of these categories, but for two different reasons. ABC Disney pays $75 million a year to air the Oscars. They make a ton of ad money, and it's the majority of the Academy's revenue. So they are beholden to ABC Disney now to kind of do whatever they want. And Disney now has Fox. They're just bigger and bigger. And yes, this will become part of the other conversation of the new award category, but I abhor the idea of making this telecast shorter.
I do too.
A long telecast is crucial to this. Nobody complains when the Super Bowl goes long. Nobody complains when final games of any other sports go long. It makes for exciting watching. I don't.
It's something on Twitter, and I apologize if that person is listening. I don't remember who wrote this, but things like the World Cup and March Madness go on for weeks and weeks, and we can't even get a fourth hour of the Oscars. It suddenly becomes too much.
I didn't even realize that the World Cup was still happening when it was happening. I thought it had been a week or 2 weeks, and it was done, and it was still going on. I was like, are they not done playing yet? What's going on? How is this happening? Yes, but we can't have a 4-hour broadcast. No. Mm-mm.
So with the categories being dropped, we agree that the 3 shorts will clearly be the first to go. What else do you think is even a remote possibility? The sound categories, makeup, do we think it could even go beyond that?
I don't think that it will. I think sound categories are maybes. It's weird. They couple all of these things together. So yeah. Often animated short just go together. They're announced together. Documentary feature and documentary short are often announced together. I could see the sound categories going, but I don't think it's not gonna cut that much time out. They're already very short as it is.
I agree that. They usually use the same 2 presenters to do both sound categories, so you don't even have the time of people leaving the stage.
Yes, exactly. But they always find time for truly senseless montages. And those are the things that people actually complain about. This is the thing that I'm the most frustrated with about these decisions, all of them, is that they are not coming from a place where the Academy actually is listening to what people have complained about at all. At all.
Well, and I think that they're listening to the complaints of the people who aren't going to watch the Oscars anyway. So when you talk to someone that doesn't watch the Oscars, you ask them why, and they say, well, they're too long, or I haven't seen the movies, or you can change different elements of those, and the people who say that still won't watch the Oscars.
Yes. Well, that's a part of the of the conversation about the new category, because that's a huge part of it. I feel like they took the jokes that are always made every year about how long the category is, and every year the host, even if it's only an hour into the show, will already make this is the 4th hour of the Oscars and da da da, and it's a running joke, and it has been a running joke for a long time. But it's a joke. It's that. I don't know. I'm so frustrated. I'm so frustrated.
I also feel like a large aspect of the problem of the perceived problem of the Oscars running over 3 hours isn't that people aren't willing to watch a 4th hour. It's that people aren't willing to watch a 4th hour when it's 11:30 at night on the East Coast.
Yes, I think that is a legitimate issue.
Then they could be 4 hours and no one would care.
Yeah.
The Super Bowl starts at 6 o'clock on the East Coast. The Oscars tend to not start, I think, until 8. Why can't they also start at 6? And then it can be 4 hours and you aren't losing people because they want to go to bed. The people that drop out midway through the telecast aren't doing so because they're bored. They're doing so because they're tired.
Mm-hmm. That's a really important point, because you would think that viewership would increase as it gets closer to the, Best Actress and Best Picture, but it doesn't. It goes down because it's so late in the evening. So yeah, instead of saying let's do a 3-hour telecast now, which they probably won't be able to meet anyway, why not move it earlier? It's already a Sunday. Just do it earlier in the day.
Yep.
Why not?
So I have a question while we're talking about the non-televised awards. You had mentioned earlier about the Emmys and the Grammys. The Emmys and the Grammys, each have 1,000 categories, and so
Yes.
obviously most of them aren't televised.
Yeah.
With the Oscars, they've been set at 24 categories. I think since 2001 was when they added Best Animated Feature.
Yeah.
And the rationale that we've always heard for why they couldn't expand past 24 categories is because of the constraint of fitting them all on a live telecast. If we are now abandoning that principle, does that open the door to actually start adding a lot of categories? Because once we're past the pretense of we can't do this because of time, then is there any reason we can't do this? Do we do all of a sudden in the next few years we start seeing things like choreography, voiceover, stunt, best credit sequence?
I don't think so. Otherwise, I think they would have to do what the Emmys do and have the creative arts on a different weekend. But again, it's not that many categories. They've already taken the honorary Oscars out of the main show. They have
Right.
they have their own thing. But that's a pre-announced thing. It happens in November, way before any type of voting and before the end of the year even. But I do wonder if maybe they could do a 2-weekend event. It would obviously change the voting schedule quite a bit, but that might be a way to kill two birds with one stone. I don't want it, but it might be a way to do that.
Do you have any passion Oscar category that you've always wanted to see and feared you will never get your wish?
Not really. I'm fine with the increasing categories. I think there are things that deserve to be recognized. I think I really do think that stunt casting and coordination is a fantastic thing to use as a potential new category.
And Tom Cruise could finally win an Oscar.
Yeah, but he would. Well, I guess he would win for doing all of his own stunts. And the Screen Actors Guild and the Emmys both are already on that.
If Tom Cruise won an Oscar for Best Stunt, that would be like Stanley Kubrick's only Oscar being for visual effects.
Yes, it would pretty much be that way. And then they wouldn't have to give him an honorary one. I don't know. I don't look at it as, diluting by having more categories. I think having more categories is fine. When you finish a movie and you watch all those credits, they're not just 24 categories of people. There are 100. There are so many different elements. It doesn't mean that, there's a best grip category. I'm not against it, but it probably isn't necessary. But I think there are a lot of elements of filmmaking that don't get as much attention. I think casting would be a fantastic one. I would love to see sometimes the return of categories like adapted song score or adapted score. But even those could be like juried almost essentially every year, where if enough films qualify, then it triggers, the category to happen. I think that would be cool. Do you have any?
The one that I've always I don't hold out any hope of this ever happening, and I don't even know how it would work. But something that I've always been really drawn to in film is really creative use of pre-existing music. So I'm thinking of things like the scene in 500 Days of Summer where he's dancing along to Hall & Oates. So I guess it would be a category for music supervision. But I've always thought that was the most artful film tactic that has no award.
And again, the Emmys just introduced that, and I think it's a fantastic category. I think it's a great idea, the curation of existing music. I think it's wonderful. So yeah, that would totally work. I don't think the problem with the telecast is too many categories. I think it is just a telecast that needs to be fun, exciting, and move quickly. I think the biggest dependency of that is the host. I think you have to have a host that is extremely multifunctional. They have to be very funny. They have to sing and dance. They have to kind of do a little bit of everything. And you can look at some of the very best hosts, especially in the last decade or so, and their ratings kind of show that. Hugh Jackman, Ellen DeGeneres, fantastic hosts that people loved.
This year's Oscars don't have a host yet.
No, they don't, but it's going to be Jimmy Kimmel because it's ABC.
Well, do you think he will come back?
Yeah, I do.
I wonder how, it's no secret that the Oscars often have a hard time finding a host because it's a pretty thankless job. I wonder, now that there's the huge pressure to bring the ship in 3 hours or bust, if that'll make it even harder going forward to find a suitable host.
I don't know if it will, because I mean, again, if you really want to make a shorter telecast, then cut the actual fat. Don't cut the categories. Cut the stupid shit like pulling people off of Hollywood Boulevard to come into the Dolby and take pictures with.
Giving pizzas to Jennifer Lawrence.
That was, oh my god, it was garbage. It was so dumb, and that was desperate in and of itself. And I mean, I have my own feelings about that because I feel like it's actually part of the new award category thing. I absolutely hated the bringing the tour bus people in. I thought that was it was a total mockery of them. It was everything that people hate about Hollywood and why they're called Hollywood elites. I thought it was awful. Awful.
Hollywood are called elitists, but that was a time that we earned the insult.
Yeah, it was tacky.
We in Hollywood, which I'm not. But.
Yeah, it was they were brought in to be mocked, and it was mean, and I thought it was just awful. It was ridiculous. So you know what? Cut that out. And then you can have all of those shorts and their speeches in that time. So it's attacking the wrong thing. It's awful. Let's move to the next subject.
The date change.
The date change.
Fascinated by this one for a lot of deep and speculative reasons.
Yes. So here is the write-up for this. This is an earlier air date for the 92nd Oscars. And the date of the 92nd Oscars telecast will move to Sunday, February 9th, 2020, from the previously announced February 23rd date. The date change will not affect awards eligibility dates or the voting process. And all that means is you still have to have your movie in by, the end of December, and it has to show for a week. So that's really all that means. But the ramifications of this are
huge. I think film Twitter today has been so hung up on the popular film category, and rightfully so, because there's a lot to unpack there. But people are not talking about the date change enough, and I think it's a much bigger deal than we're really thinking about.
Yeah, this is in my Twitter rant. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think it got to like the sixth thing that I was talking about, and it's going to wreak havoc on December releases. It's going to be a publicist's nightmare in terms of awards, and again, the biggest mistake about this is how poorly this is treating the audience and potential viewers. They're still not going to be able to see these movies in time. They cannot build a fan base. It's my mind is blown at the audacity of this. It doesn't.
A lot of sort of bystanders don't seem to understand is that the movies can't just come out earlier, because for a lot of these movies, their financial success depends on being in theaters, after the Oscar nominations. So you can't just all of a sudden release all of these in October and think that the change worked.
Yes, and not to mention the fact that a lot of these begin their visibility with the fall film festivals, and those are September and early October.
Yeah, so I have some festival thoughts and almost fears with this.
Mm-hmm.
My first thought is about Sundance. Sundance is always the last week of January, or the last 10-ish days of January.
Yeah.
When that happens 3 weeks before the Oscars, it's fine. But if all of a sudden that's just 1 week before the Oscars, is the industry going to be willing to go spend 6 days in Utah when the Oscars are just a week away?
Yeah, because think about this. Think about that. All of the shows and all of the guilds that come before the Oscars utilize all of January and most all of February to do their awards and to do their nominations. That's all gone. Everything is going to happen in January now. Everything. There aren't enough weekends.
Yeah, I agree.
It doesn't make any sense.
And I wonder if, the Golden Globes, I think this past year, actually the last few years, I think, haven't seen the new Star Wars movies because, they wouldn't get previewed in time, and, they just sort of went on with the Golden Globe nominating process, not having seen those.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if the list of movies that happens to is going to hugely expand, because I wonder if the Golden Globes are going to have to move earlier.
But they're already the first weekend.
Yeah.
I mean, right after, New Year's. How is that possible? Everybody, BAFTA, DGA, PGA, SAG, Golden Globes, everybody now has to completely juggle.
Well, and I don't know if you saw, but BAFTA basically already said that they would move their date because, they have, I think their tweet said, we have been the month before the Oscars for more than 10 years, and we will continue to be a month before the Oscars.
Which puts them in the same weekend as what the Golden Globes normally are. It's insane. It's insane. And,
the consequences could be further reaching than, so if the industry largely stops going to Sundance because of the timing on the schedule, does Sundance move dates? If they're in the position of either we get stars or we, stay on the calendar where we are, but we can't do both, what do they choose?
Honestly, in this case, I would move Sundance to after the Oscars, after February 9th.
And so then again, there are consequences because, and this is in some way nitpicky because this only affects a few hundred people. But I work for Sundance. The staff for Sundance generally has a 3-month job. We more or less start around Halloween and work till about Valentine's Day. Mm-hmm. And then virtually the entire staff moves to either New York or Seattle to work for either Tribeca or Seattle International Film Festival. If Sundance moves back a few weeks, then all of a sudden that affects whether Tribeca and Seattle can even have staff. It becomes a domino effect.
Yeah, I don't think the Academy for a moment, and you can tell by how haphazard these announcements were and incomplete, that they just did not take into account the impact of it, and everybody else, and every other show, and the hundreds and thousands of people involved with jobs. They didn't think about it at all.
Yeah,
it's mind blowing. I think it is terrible.
So the late December releases, things like the last few years, The Post, Selma, Hidden Figures, Phantom Thread, these films that not only come out in late December, but didn't play any festivals, and essentially no one has seen them until, not even critics have seen them until like the week before Christmas. Mm-hmm. Do we agree that that's just done now, that there won't be films like that anymore? The timing just doesn't allow it?
I don't know. No, of course, no. Because Christmas Day and Christmas releases it's still huge. It's still a massive box office day.
But that something like Phantom Thread or The Post, it can still have its release date, but that it couldn't have that release date without playing at a festival first. Because when no one has seen it until late December, you don't give yourself enough time to sort of create Oscar support out of the ether.
No, you don't. I mean, that's why neither of them got, Screen Actors Guild nominations. They just weren't seen. Right. And one worked out better than the other.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily forcing those films to change their release date, but that they will be forced to be done in time to play fall festivals if they want to have that release date.
Yeah, I think again, what this is going to do is create a seismic shift in how all of Hollywood works. This is not just a 2-week move of a television show. This is the schedules and careers of the entire industry and what they can do now and when they can do it. It's mind-blowing to me. It's really crazy too, because I'm old enough to remember when the Oscars were in April, because people needed to see them in theaters. This was, pre-screeners and all that stuff, and you had to see, actual movies in the theater. And it wasn't just for voters, it was for the audience too. This is an audience watched show. If you haven't seen anything, you don't have anything to root for.
Yeah. I mean, when I was in high school, I feel like I remember I watched the Oscars on spring break every year.
Yeah. I loved that. I thought it was fantastic. But that's also when, movies used to be able to be in the theater for 6 months and 8 months.
That is a change too.
And that is a big change. That isn't really different.
Here's something that kind of drives me insane about the date change. Is, so if the Academy sort of takes a poll of all of the people who are complaining about the Oscars, and the Academy is getting a sense of, why don't you watch the Oscars? Why don't you watch the Oscars? And they're accumulating answers, and a lot of people say, well, it just takes so long to get to the Oscars, and so the Academy hears these answers and thinks, okay, the solution to that is to move up the date. But here's the problem: the reason people think it takes so long to get to the Oscars isn't because of where the date is, where the Oscar date is on the calendar. It's because of how many things happen before the Oscars. It's because of how packed the lead-up feels. But that's not going to change. All of the things that are before the Oscars are still going to be before the Oscars, and if necessary, they'll just move earlier, as we already saw BAFTA did.
Yes, you're right. It doesn't change anything with that. The Oscars will still always be last. Right. And they were whining that, you know, they sort of feel like they're you know, dragging themselves across the finish line. Well, you're the end.
You know, it seems like you can either be first or you can be the culmination. You, by definition, cannot be both. Mm-hmm. And the Oscars are trying to, I don't know that they're trying to be both exactly, but they're trying to sort of draw from both, if that makes any sense. And it's not going to work.
Yeah, no, you're right. They do want both. And no, it won't work. I wish BAFTA would just say, fuck it, let's go back to what we used to do and be after the Oscars and not care.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Quick question for you.
Yes.
That I was looking for on Twitter earlier to see if this data point is available, and it doesn't seem to be. The Academy Board of Governors is 54 people. They voted on all this last night.
Yes.
Anyone know what the vote tally was? Was it close? Was it 28 to 26? Or was it 50 to 4?
Oh, I have no idea. And it's just, they will never release that kind of information, I don't think.
Well, I definitely agree they won't release it publicly. Do you think that information will get out? Do you think someone will anonymously report it?
No. I don't. Otherwise, I think we'd have
it already.
We'd have, well, not just for this, but for other things.
Yeah.
Like how close other governor races were and stuff. And there's often some allusion to that, you know, if something was close or, you know, that, you know, two people were tied and had to run off. But it's, yeah, that's as close as we get.
Do you think the 54-person Board of Governors even knows what the vote was, or do you think they're just told by talliers who won?
I'm not sure if it's how that voting process works, so I don't know. Like I said on Twitter, this wouldn't have happened if Laura Dern was president. God damn it!
I agree.
But yeah, I'm kind of when I look at the list, and I'm looking at the list of the Board of Governors right now, I'm like, all right, who fucking voted for this shit? Who did? Who was it? You, David Rubin?
Yeah, I asked Chris Tapley of Variety on Twitter if he had any idea what the vote was, and he said that he didn't know, but that, you know, roughly a third of the governors were just installed in their position last month, and he thinks that they were maybe sort of easy to convince to fall in line with this new agenda. And I wonder if
Sure.
there's some truth to that.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of talk too of if the Academy will walk back any of these new things that they plan on doing. I want to say yes that they will, but I don't think it's going to happen because of what is behind it.
Yeah, and I think the issue there is we have to know whether the Academy solely controls its own destiny at this point, or how influenced they are by ABC and Disney, because, you know, a lot of people thought that Disney might walk back the firing of James Gunn, and that sure as hell didn't happen.
Mm-hmm. But they're still going to use his script, so awkward. Well, that's a really good segue to go right into the third, and by all accounts today, the worst new change that was announced. And that is a new award category, which there has not been.
Notes about talking points for this. I got about 1/3 of a page on each of the previous two, and then a full page on this one. So I'm locked and loaded.
And yeah, and this is the thing that people really just, you know, went ballistic on. So we will create a new category for outstanding achievement in popular film. Eligibility requirements and other key details will be forthcoming. Good Lord. I mean, where do you begin? Where do you want to begin with this?
Well, let me start here. So it says that the rules are to be determined.
Yep.
And I, believe that on face value, that the rules are to be determined and that they do not know yet. What I don't think they necessarily realize is how impossible it is going to be to determine what counts and what doesn't. I was a philosophy minor in college, and I remember in a college ethics class, something that our professor always used to sort of drill into us is when you're making these kind of classifications and rules of things, you have to figure out how to create a system that includes everything you want to include and excludes everything you want to exclude. And I do not think the Academy will be able to figure out how to do that in this case.
I don't think so either, because I think whatever they do come up with, I mean, the idea is already so shit on, it won't even really matter. And, I mean, just the idea... Is it purely box office? Is it box office to budget ratio? How do you define what popular is in the first place? Is Black Panther popular because it makes $700 million? Or is something like Moonlight popular because it cost $1.5 million and it made 25?
I think they'll eventually end up attaching some element of must be part of a franchise or something. But then, even with that, you run into the difficulty of something like Avatar or The Matrix, which were, first movies. They were original screenplays, not based on any pre-existing intellectual property. They became franchises, but, how do you call the first movie a franchise movie?
If they were to limit it to franchise stuff, that makes it an even bigger ghettoization than it already is.
Well, and then also, do you allow things like Before Midnight to count?
I'm going to be very curious to see what the eligibility requirements are.
I guarantee if the fine print allows the possibility that something like Before Midnight could be included, the Before Midnight publicists will find that out, and they will market it if they think an award can be gotten out of it.
And so this brings up the question that I asked much later in the day. The voting on the Oscars for nominations happens within each individual branch, except for Best Picture.
So what's the branch here?
Who votes on this category?
I mean, I guess it's, a de facto alternate Best Picture, so it would probably go to every branch theoretically. But, do the documentarians vote on what's popular? Not to say they're wildly unqualified, but, they're probably less interested.
Ironically, though, this has been the year for extremely popular documentaries.
That's true.
So how do you... Again, what if Won't You Be My Neighbor qualifies?
Yeah.
It's a huge, huge hit.
And also, if you make the constraints anything to do with budget, American Sniper, I think, was the highest grossing film of its year.
Mm-hmm.
Does that count, even though it's, by the same guy that made Mystic River and $1 Million Baby?
Yes, it why wouldn't it count? Sure. It made $350 million.
Well, sure. But, is that something that we recognize as being
popular?
Or a blockbuster? Or
I have to imagine. Of course, we would have to wait and see what those eligibility requirements are, but I imagine it would be. And we already know, too, that a movie can get both. But, there's also the fact that there hasn't been an animated Best Picture nominee since they changed the expansion of the expansion.
Yeah, so I'm actually writing a Vanity Fair piece about that very topic right now. I guess your listeners will hear this podcast sometime Thursday early afternoon.
Yep.
My Vanity Fair piece should go up Thursday late afternoon. It's my best guess. But it's about how in 2009, 2010, when the Best Picture race first expanded, the the number of nominees went from 5 to 10, but nothing about the voting process changed. So all you were doing was you were adding in 5 extra movies each year that accumulated the most, third place votes, fourth place votes, fifth place votes. And that's how those 2 years you got nominees like Up and Inception and District 9 and Toy Story 3. In 2011, they changed it to where to get a nomination, you had to get at least 5% of the first place vote, which made it not a popularity contest, but a passion contest. And that's why those movies aren't getting nominated. And so I guess my question is, if the whole point was to get movies like Inception and Toy Story 3 in the Best Picture race, the Academy already had the solution because they did it in 2009 and 2010. Mm-hmm. And set of rules was already there and existed and is very easy to go back to.
I would have absolutely preferred them go back to the solid 10 nominations. I actually thought it was a great idea. I really liked that a lot. It gave us, crap like The Blind Side, but that is a movie that made $255 million. You are going to have people within the voting block that are going to support a movie like that making $255 million. That's fine. This isn't a group of critics. This isn't the People's Choice Awards. These are people in the industry, and if that's what they want to vote for, then that's what they want to vote for. That's fine. It just was a better and more fair way than what we've seen since then, for sure. And we can't really continue this conversation without establishing what, by all estimations, is the overriding reasons why it happened. Yes, ABC Disney is forcing the hand of the Academy to make changes, and Variety had a great piece about that. We can talk about that in a minute. But for me, and I think for a lot of people based on what I read, this is about Black Panther. And what I see this as is the Academy thinking that they're being forward thinking by doing this before the next Oscars. They don't want a Dark Knight situation again, where it didn't get nominated for Best Picture and they scrambled and then made the changes the next year to expand as a result. But what this does is assume that Black Panther is not or was not going to be Best Picture nominated under the rules and guidelines and eligibility of right now. When if they had just looked at the people that do this for a living, they would see that Black Panther is in the majority of people's Best Picture predictions already. And I think it is astonishingly tone deaf and insulting and bizarre that they would do this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Mark Harris had a tweet that, of all years to do this, a year where Black Panther is kind of the lightning rod movie, which was made and cast almost entirely by African Americans. Now you create a new award whose agenda is more or less the term separate but equal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a very, very savage tweet, and it was deadly accurate.
Yeah. Now, I will say that I am in the minority here among the Oscar prognosticating crowd that I do not think Black Panther would have gotten a Best Picture nomination because of the voting system that mandates that it doesn't matter how broadly loved you are. If 5% of the Academy, and in an 8,000-person Academy, that's roughly 400 people, if 400 Academy members didn't think you were the best movie of the year, you don't get a nomination. And so I don't think Black Panther would have gotten a nomination. I'm in the minority there, and I certainly could have been wrong, which we likely won't find out now at this point.
Yeah, now it's completely the entire year is tainted now for that.
Yeah, and so I guess my point is that the Academy could have just gone back to the '09 and 2010 voting system, where you have 10 films, but under the old voting system where third, fourth, fifth, sixth place votes matter, and then Black Panther would have 100% gotten in.
Mm-hmm.
Because under that voting system, it only matters how many Academy members put you in their top 10, not number one. So that would have absolutely assured that Black Panther got a Best Picture nomination. But instead, they're ghettoizing it into this other category that no one will respect, no one will take seriously.
No, I don't even think that if they do continue with it, who's going to want to win this category now?
Yeah, and we should mention Black Panther's director, Ryan Coogler, sort of famously declined his Academy invitation.
Yeah.
So, not only is he not in the Academy to vote for this, but I think the writing appears to be on the wall that he gives no shits about the Oscars.
And certainly won't for this.
Yeah, and so he I would doubt he won't be out there campaigning for this.
No, I'd sooner see Bryan Singer campaigning for Bohemian Rhapsody,
which I would like to see. That would make.
Oh my God, my brain is exploding with this because it's. Again, this is the Academy, and this is 54 people, and whoever voted in favor of this, really not understanding the pulse and not reading the room.
Yeah,
and not in any way looking at what people have asked for. The majority of people hate the way that Best Picture is now, being an open 5 to 10. People overwhelmingly want it to be either 5 or 10. And that would have been, like you said, a much easier solution had they just gone back to 10. Had they just done that and gone back to 10, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. We would be,
we have to be clear that it's
having
not
a different one.
Yeah, we have to be clear that it's not simply going back to 10, but they would have had to have gone back to the old voting method as well.
Yes, well, exactly. Everything that entails is what I mean.
So I'm in the minority here, again, that I do actually like the current Best Picture system because I like the idea, just intuitively, that if at least 5% of the Academy didn't think you were the best film of the year, then why should you compete for Best Film of the Year?
Mm-hmm.
So I like the way that just kind of feels to me. But I would have been fine going back to the old system for all the reasons that this is happening, and this is just a much worse fix. It's not even a fix.
It's not a fix. It's just so astonishing to me that the idea was even floated in the first place, and that they went through with it, that this was it.
From a rating standpoint, do you think this has any chance of working? Because
No,
I don't.
I don't at all. And there's a lot of reasons why. One, it looks like pandering, because it is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're right. It doesn't just look like it. It is.
And people that don't normally watch aren't going to watch as a result. This is not the same as, Titanic or Lord of the Rings, which were huge, giant, worldwide hits, multiple nominations already and multiple wins. It's just not the same.
Yeah. The Oscars in 2004 could advertise, watch the Oscars, Lord of the Rings might win Best Picture. This year, they can't say that with Black Panther. They can say, watch the Oscars, Black Panther might win,
the MTV Movie Award for Best Movie.
Created to trick you.
Yes. I do have one possible solution of how this could work in the way that they want it to work. Because the motive for this is increasing their low ratings and bringing in a bigger audience and an audience that sees the movies that are nominated. We just talked about earlier that, you know, all these December releases, and this is something that happens now still, and it will only be worse with the date change next year, is that people don't have a movie to root for because they haven't seen it. If you don't live in New York or LA, you're not going to see a handful of movies that keep winning until it's already done. And then you have this artificial hype that you are not a part of, and then you're being told, okay, well, you know, Allison Janney and I, Tonya is the best supporting actress of the year, and you can't really say anything about it because she's won everything now. There's no investment there. I sort of lost my train of thought, and because I'm so stressed out about this. Yeah, go ahead. I need a moment.
So I have an outlandish suggestion.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, my suggestion. That's what it was. I'm sorry, Daniel. I'm gonna step on.
Fine. Go ahead.
I'm gonna step on you. Yes. Okay. So they want ratings. They want viewership. They are creating a popular film, literally using that in the title. If you really, really want that, then you need to make this basically an audience award that is voted on by the public. Take it outside of the Oscars, because this isn't really about the Oscars, and give the people that you want to watch the show a reason to watch the show. I'm not saying to do it. I think it's a terrible idea, and I don't want it to be American Idol and MTV.
Yeah.
But if you actually want to make this work, I think that might be the only way to do it.
So I would definitely hate that. Okay, so let me give my...
I would too, to be clear.
Here's my theory on the quote unquote only way to do it. And I don't know if this is a good idea. It's an idea, I guess.
There are no good ideas. I think that's what we're establishing.
I agree. So it seems like the Oscars are measuring themselves more or less against the Super Bowl. They want the ratings of the Super Bowl, which won't happen, but, ignore that for a second. Something the Super Bowl does well is it tries to have broad appeal in the sense that, the people who like football and like sports, they get two halves of football. But then in the middle there, you get 20 minutes of Lady Gaga for the people who don't care about football.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if the Oscars essentially need to make their own version of a halftime show that is for the opposite demographic as the rest of the show. In the same way that the Super Bowl has more or less successfully figured out how to spend 20 minutes appealing to the people that don't care about watching the rest of the Super Bowl.
I totally get where you're coming from with that, because it always confounds me, or, it seems to, that halftime show performers sometimes don't seem to jibe with, the game and that atmosphere and that viewership. But when you're talking about, something like the Super Bowl, which has huge ratings, over 100 million people, there's more going on there. So there's certainly going to be crossover. People that like football aren't going to automatically not like Beyonce.
Right.
But, it doesn't mean that in the middle of the Oscars you're going to put on a football game.
Right.
And make that work. I think the thing that works about something like the Super Bowl, and the thing that works about something like the Oscars, is that you're tapping into a pretty fundamental and universal appeal. I don't like football and I don't watch football, but I absolutely understand it. I understand the appeal. I understand the fanaticism. because I have it with the Oscars. I think something like the Oscars is, because it's about movies, it's who doesn't like movies. That's the idea.
Yeah.
This is an automatically, or should be an automatically universally appreciated and liked program, because it's about something that everybody likes. I'm all for the idea of making something like the Oscars more universally appealing, though, rather than just being such an insular group of people, giving each other awards. And it's one of the things, that they get made fun of all the time, is how, out of touch it seems. That's a totally valid argument, because it does seem like that. That's that stupid, bringing the tourist in thing is an example of that, of being out of touch. The Oscars are the greatest opportunity to bring multiple audiences together. Audiences that watch, 8th Grade, or Won't You Be My Neighbor, or Black Panther, or whatever, The Meg. I don't care.
You think The Meg will get one of our popular film nominations this year?
Fucking hope so. Yes, I goddamn hope so. It's missing that. This is the component that's missing from the Oscars. It's taking something that is already organically the universal appeal of film, and the power of movies, and the impact that it has. And the Oscars are constantly missing opportunities to do that. They think that montages are the way to reach people, and the way to say that movies are a universal language. And they're wrong about it every single time, because they're not. There's something else. It's almost intangible, and it's hard to come up with something that would do that. I would hate to be an Oscars producer, because I pull the rest of my hair out of trying to figure out, how to make an efficient show and a fun show, but how to make a show that speaks to as many people as possible. But yep. I sort of dig the idea of a halftime show there. But again, it would have to be
along with the popular film.
Yeah, but it would have to be something that's absolutely sincere. Otherwise, it will come off as a mockery.
And that's a good point, because that sort of hints at one of the biggest problems with this change, is that it's very clearly not sincere.
It's not at all. It's an insult. People are not stupid. Some people are stupid, but
some people are stupid,
obviously. But this did not draw fans out today. Like, oh my god, this is so cool! I can finally see Avengers: Infinity War get an Oscar nomination. Nobody said that.
I did see exactly one person on Twitter, on film Twitter, who was in favor of this. That was Sasha Stone from Awards Daily.
Yes, I saw that as well.
Definitely disagree with.
I vehemently disagree with it, and for all the reasons why, but she can have that.
Yeah, and her point was largely that the Oscars have grown stale, and they award the same kind of shit all the time, and so they need this kind of Hail Mary. But I don't agree with the notion that they award the same stuff all the time, and I especially think in the last decade, and with the influx of new members, that what the Oscars have awarded recently, and what it at least seems like they'll continue to award in the future, is the very opposite of stale.
Yeah, it was a weird comment, because it's demonstrably untrue.
Yeah.
what also is untrue, and one of the more baffling elements of this, and let me look at my... whatever, it's in there somewhere, is the concept that popular movies don't already get nominated and win, because they do.
Right.
Every year. It's crazy. The Oscars game is already a game of apples and oranges. You are voting one thing over another thing because it's a different thing.
Yep.
You don't need two separate Best Picture categories. They tried that in the first year of the Oscars. You know how long that lasted? 1 year.
1 year. And to those who don't remember, I think it was Best Picture went to a film called Wings. And then what was it called? Best Artistic Achievement?
It was unique and artistic achievement, and it was like best production. So yeah, it was Sunset and Wings.
That's for Two Humans, the F.W. Murnau film.
Yeah, it's... I mean, it's like they don't know their own history.
Yeah, and you know, that year is telling in the sense that when you look up on Wikipedia what won Best Picture, it'll tell you Wings.
Yep.
But, you know, every person that cares about film in 2018 unanimously, you know, agrees that Sunrise was the film from that year worth seeing. And I severely doubt you can find many Oscar historians that have seen Wings. I certainly have not. I don't know how many out there will be.
Not that many. Its availability. I don't even know. Yes, I have. I don't know what its availability is. But I'm older. Yeah. So I got to see stuff when I was younger. I don't know how much we want to talk about ABC Disney and why this is. We kind of talked around it and about it a little bit. But
yeah, I really only have, I guess, one thing to add on that, is that this is going to start roundabout, and I will hopefully get to some sort of cogent point. When Kobe Bryant won his Oscar 6 months ago or whenever it was, I said at the time that I thought that was the worst moment in the history of the Oscars. And I still stand by that.
And they said, hold my beer.
Yeah. Because it was the moment that Hollywood and the Oscars proved they are no different than Trump voters. They proved it that, you know, they can have every ideal they want and espouse every, you know, moral and ethical standard they want. But then when it comes to someone that they see as their guy, they will look past everything and still hand him the award.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that same problem here with the Board of Governors essentially endorsing corruption, I think, from ABC, more or less trying to mandate that Disney be given Oscars. That's at least what it looks like.
Yeah. It's ironic, though, because Disney has never cared about the Oscars. They don't campaign the way that other studios do.
Right.
They make their billions of dollars, and they're really into that, and they're really good at that. And that's their reward. So, you know, they have not really cared about, you know, getting just the technical nominations and animated feature wins and stuff like that. So it's a weird move to me in its transparency, because when you think about who Disney is, they are Disney, Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars, and now Fox.
Yeah.
If this category goes on and continues to, this is the Disney category.
Yeah, I mean, there will be plenty of years where all 5 nominees are some division of Disney.
Absolutely.
It makes me think of the line from Chinatown when, you know, John Huston is playing the villain Noah Cross, and it's kind of finally established that he is indeed the villain. And he's a millionaire trying to steal California's water. And Jack Nicholson, the protagonist, basically looks at him and says, "What I don't understand is why. How much better can you eat? How much more can you have?"
Mm-hmm.
And you know, what the hell does Disney want more for? They have everything. What is having an Oscar going to make them sleep better at night?
I don't know. That's why I said this is such a strange move to make, because it doesn't seem like an Oscar. It's not the Oscar that they want. But like I said, I still don't think that they really care about that. They care about money. They care about getting that investment of $75 million back every year in ad revenue. That ad revenue goes down as viewership goes down.
Yeah.
And, simply thinking that, adding a new category because superhero movies don't get nominated is not the right approach. Because what it's not doing is addressing just the discrepancy that happens for a superhero movie. Voters don't really vote for it. Logan just got that adapted screenplay nomination.
Yeah, and we should say that was a very weak year for adapted screenplay. There was just nothing else to give it to.
Yeah, it was an extremely weak year for that. But we saw how close, at least we thought, that Wonder Woman was to a Best Picture nomination. And that's essentially doing what's happening this year. It's taking something that was a bigger success even than anybody thought that it was going to be. And that's exactly what happened with Black Panther. Nobody saw $700 million coming. No fucking buddy saw that. But you don't create an entire category for it.
I do want to quickly point out to your listeners that you were, to your credit, you were the very first analyst on Twitter that I saw make the connection of ABC and the $75 million revenue, and how the circle completes itself. So to say.
Yeah, I just didn't write anything of it, and that's not even like new information. This is from 4 years ago, but they and since then, Variety especially has written like 3 articles today. They're just much better at that than I am. But yeah,
they're better staffed than you are.
Well, there's also that. This is about securing their investment, and it is about nothing else than that.
And it's funny that you chose those words, because that's exactly what John Huston says to Jack Nicholson in Chinatown, that it's about the future, Mr. Giddies. It's about the future.
Yeah, it is. They have the Oscars locked in for a really long time without any good idea of what television viewing is going to be. We don't know what it's going to be in 5 years.
Yeah.
This could be a really terrible investment for Disney.
Yeah, and the fact that we don't know what it's going to be, again, reiterates the fact that, the ratings probably can't get better.
They won't. No, they won't. They won't get better. This isn't Titanic or Lord of the Rings. It is not that. I do really believe that multiple platforms to watch the show would be super important, and being able to track that. Regular television has had to do this the last decade, of stepping away from Nielsen ratings as the only judge of ratings, and now having to look at DVR and everything else, and then looking at 3 days and then 7 days to be able to accurately define the viewership of a show. There's no reason why the Oscars can't do that or shouldn't do that. They have a worldwide audience. They could have much more.
Do you think that the cumulative effect of this and the James Gunn firing and, even the Han Solo movie, which was a semi-fiasco, do you think that this is all going to create a building momentum of any substantial problems for Disney in terms of public perception, or you think they're essentially too big to notice any element of consequence?
I think they're far too big for it. I think they know that, and I think when you look at the there's a really great and also super terrifying graphic of everything that Disney has coming out for the next 5-7 years, and the dominance is so overwhelming.
Yeah.
That you can't put the brakes on that train. You simply can't. It won't happen.
Now, if, for example, the James Gunn situation hurts Marvel movies in terms of getting director talent, I guess I do think that over a period of years that will matter, but I certainly could be proven wrong.
By getting director talent, do you mean directors that won't be willing to do a Marvel movie because of Disney? Because of James Gunn?
Yeah, I guess, I think that that's a possibility. Certainly that'll have to be borne out, and who knows whether it will be.
I don't think that's going to be an issue, too, because it's Hollywood, and any person that falls has 1,000 people right behind them that are completely willing to eschew any morals or ethics that maybe they thought they had
well,
in order to do something huge and popular.
Yeah, for sure those 1,000 people are standing behind James Gunn, but would they have made a movie that was as good or as successful as James Gunn made? That's the question that I have. Sure.
I don't know. Well, I mean, clearly there is an element that Disney isn't even sure of that by keeping James Gunn's script. If they really didn't want him, then they ditch that and get a new one.
That is true.
So, I mean, they're showing their ass pretty clearly. I don't know. I feel like this is something that will and has, created a big stir and a lot of disdain on social media. And then it'll be nothing. We're in the news cycle that we're in, that we'll still be talking about it tomorrow, but it will not be the same as today by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, I have exhausted my page of notes.
I'm exhausted in thinking about this today. And, You're
exhausted your exhaustion.
I have exhausted my exhaustion. Yes, absolutely. Oh my God, I have another podcast to do tomorrow night for Toronto. Goodness.
Oh, I do have one final quick question. If you had to throw out a wild guess of what the other 4 nominees will be in this new fake category.
Oh my God. Well, again, without knowing what the
right, we don't know what the
eligibility and the criteria is. If I just go off of box office as the parameter, as the barometer of that, Infinity War, Incredibles 2.
I think A Quiet Place would be in there.
Huh. Okay, I didn't really think about that.
It's made, what, 175 million, somewhere in that ballpark?
That is a great example. Not a justification for the category, but a great example of it.
Yeah, well, and it certainly, again, depends on what the threshold is. If you set the threshold at 200 million, then that's, of course...
Yes, if it's purely a box office thing, then that's, like, super gross and shitty. Because these movies cost that much to make and market.
Right.
Otherwise, you know, I'd say I think book club needs to be in there. God damn it, that movie's a huge hit.
Yeah, that's true.
Again, whatever the eligibility is.
Of honor at the Traverse City Film Festival. So,
yeah, that's going to be fun to see what they reveal the rules of engagement on for this, or if they walk it back. I was reading today in the various Variety articles that the executives are totally unfazed by this backlash.
Yeah, I saw that quote too, which disturbed me, to say the least.
Exactly, which means it's not really about the audience at all. They don't give a fuck about the audience.
Right. Do you think there is any remote possibility of, okay, so we have this category, it is called whatever it is, the eligibility is whatever it is, but we end up with 5 nominees, one of which will very clearly be Black Panther, because that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Do you think there's any possibility, so we know the 54 Board of Governors are more or less for this, but the Academy has 8,000 members. Do you think there's any possibility of that voting body voting against Black Panther as a fuck you, this is stupid?
No, I don't. I think if there was a protest vote, that's not how it would go.
Okay.
I think if there was any type of collective protest vote with this new Academy, if anything, it would be to get it into Best Picture.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But even then, because of this now, that taints it. It doesn't get there totally organically and on its own merits. If it gets into Best Picture now, this will be the shadow over it, and that fucking sucks. That's terrible.
I agree.
Because I really do think it was going to get there totally on its own and be the first.
Yeah. And again, I don't think it was going to get there on its own, but we will.
Yes,
we'll
yes.
find out.
But I mean, like I said, even though this is so clearly revenue driven by Disney, I do really think that this was a preemptive strike by the Academy too, to avoid a Dark Knight situation, rather than let Black Panther get nominated and let it be the first, and then not need a category like this. They might have been able to have this category in their pocket to make a change next year, but I think it was such a bad idea to start it now. It cuts Black Panther right at its knees.
Do you think once we get over the collective shock of this and it becomes sort of more of a reality that we just come to accept, that it'll be a fun added wrinkle to parse as we go through Oscar season, or we're just going to continue hating it?
No, I think it's going to be continued to be hated, and I want to start an official drinking game right now for whoever hosts the Oscars of how many times they're going to mention and mock it.
Yeah,
because that's going to be the new. This show is too long.
I mean, they should just bring in Ricky Gervais to host this year. He already has his ammo.
Oh my god, that would be too much. Yeah. Oh boy, whoever they choose to host is going to have a really, really tough time.
Yeah.
They're going to have to find somebody just absolutely unimpeachable, and if is Jimmy Kimmel again because of ABC, and I don't see why it would not be, that's not the person to do it. So,
yeah, I agree.
I'm not looking forward to that. I'm like, Oscars, why do you keep finding ways for me to not like you? You were doing so well. The last couple of years have been actually really great. I love it's late, but I love the movement to a more diverse membership. It's the thing that it needed the most, and that's actually the key to all of this. The key is not making a popular movie category. The key is a voting base and a voting group that supports the movies. That's where it comes from. It doesn't come from the top down. It comes from the membership base. And that's part of the reason why I thought it was really funny when people saw some of the names that were in there. Were like, well, why is Terry Crews in there? And a lot of populist actors and stuff. And it's like, why shouldn't they be in there? Is the Oscars solely for, you know, Lee Chang-dong to watch a screener over Christmas? No, he's part of it, but so is Terry Crews now. You're not going to get... I guess I have to be careful of how I say this, or even if I believe what I'm saying. But you're not going to get worse results by having a broader base to pull from. In this case. Maybe in a general election, not so much, but...
I do and don't agree with that. I mean, part of my problem with the Grammys is their votership is so diverse amongst such a wide concept of what music is that they end up only being able to come together and agree on things that tend to be very bland.
Yes.
And I definitely don't want that to happen to the Academy. But time will tell, I guess.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. I wonder if maybe instead of letting in the entire voting, you know, membership vote on everything, if we would get much more interesting and honest results if branches only voted on their branch for nominations and for winners.
Yeah, and then, but I guess the problem there is that it would just yield almost identical results to the guilds.
Yeah, I suppose.
Which, you know, already.
But we just saw that last year. So, yeah. I don't know. I don't have the answers, folks. I just have the complaints.
Right, we don't have the answers, just know that this was not it.
Well, I don't know. Maybe we'll see. I am really curious to see if they stick with this. Yeah. I think they're going to have to now, because pulling back is just the stink is too bad now.
You know, but again, that reminds me of the whole Trump thing. That, you know, one of the biggest complaints we collectively have about Trump is that he is incapable of admitting he was wrong. But, you know, then the Academy is going to do the exact same thing.
Yeah. But see, that's why the expanded membership was the move in the right direction, because it was essentially saying, yeah, we've been wrong about this. We haven't invited enough people, the right people, all of that, and yep. You know, that was their initiative to amend that, and it was right. It was the right way to do it. This is not.
I agree.
At all. So, and with that, I will say thank you very much for joining me on this super special and super stressed out Oscar podcast, Daniel.
Thank you very much, Eric. We both needed to vent about this, so I'm glad we got to do it together.
It is. I almost wish I had like a bottle of whiskey right in front of me so that I could have been drinking this whole time, but alas, no.
Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure to be here, and I guess to be continued.
To be continued indeed. We will see what happens. All right. Goodbye.
A war is coming. My son, it is your time.
Confrontation ain't nothing new to me.
The Black Panther lives.
You can bring a bullet, bring a sword, bring a morgue, but you can't bring the truth to me.
The world's gonna start over. This is my time. This ends today.
I recognize your false confidence and calculated promises all in your conversation.